I mean, I wouldn't say that racing is what defines me. I don't necessarily look at chasing races all the time. I think that that's one of the things that I feel like I'm almost sort of insecure about, is that I don't always have a super clear plan as to where I'm going with things. But I love to train. I love the routine. I love like the day-to-day. I love being healthy. Like my ultimate goal is to just like research health, really like see how strong and like well-rounded my body can get. And I think that it's a really easy way to see how that's progressing through racing.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Jumpstart your running goals in 2023 with Microcosm Coaching. We're in it for the long run. Through breakthroughs, setbacks, and plateaus, your coach will guide you through the ups and downs in an athletic life. Whether you're running your first 5K or 10th 100 miler, Microcosm Coaching has personalized training that will help you reach your goals. My friends Zoe, TJ, and the whole crew over at Microcosm Coaching believe in the power of support through community, offering a multidisciplinary team of coaches with expertise in nutrition, mental health, and performance that will help you sustain your love for running long term. I've chosen to work with them as a sponsor of the podcast because they're amazing humans, and I've seen so many of their athletes thrive under their guidance. Microcosm Coaching offers individualized training plans and accountability through daily feedback. Your Microcosm coach will hold you accountable to your running potential. Find out more at microcosm-coaching.com and let them know I sent you. Here at For the Long Run podcast, we love January. It's an opportunity to look at the year, talk about big goals, start scheming adventures, and sign up for races. Have you decided what you're racing yet this year? If not, no worries, but now's the time. For this episode, we partnered with the REVEL race series to highlight their upcoming race, the Mount Charleston Marathon and Half, on April 1st. The Mount Charleston races feature a smooth downhill slope and spectacular scenery in the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. Toyabe means mountain in Shoshone, so you know it's going to have some good views. This race finishes near Las Vegas, so it's not only a beautiful course, but then you can celebrate in style. Not many people know this, but Las Vegas is also so much more than just the strip and the lights. There are tons of incredible outdoor recreation opportunities right outside of the city. So whether you want to party it up or you want to go relax near the beautiful sandstone of Red Rock, Mount Charleston is for you. Sign up for the Mount Charleston race series at runrevel.com and use the code FTLR for $10 off your registration at runrevel.com. We are psyched to announce a new partner of the podcast, Lauren Daniels. Lauren is a realtor helping buyers and sellers in the greater Denver and Boulder area and beyond, and has been a good friend of mine for a few years now. When I decided I wanted to buy a place in Boulder and put down roots here, I was completely overwhelmed by the home buying process. Lauren was already a good friend, so when we first talked about home buying, I felt a huge sense of relief. She's a neighborhood expert, has an incredible attention to detail, available for any and all questions, and made what could be a very difficult process super easy. And now we've got a beautiful home in Boulder. It's close to the trails with a big backyard for Alfie and views of the Flatirons. So if you're even considering buying a home in the area or anywhere, I highly recommend working with Lauren. You can reach her at ldaniels@milehighmodern.com and let her know we sent you. That's ldaniels@milehighmodern.com. Thanks so much to Lauren for supporting the podcast and helping us continue to grow, and for all those miles together. And welcome back. I have Katherine Short joining me from Hawaii. Katherine, Thanks so much for taking some time to chat and taking your wind chimes down.
No worries. Aloha. Nice to chat with you.
So were
so loud.
All good. Where are you in Hawaii?
I live on Maui in a place called Kahana, which is on the west side. So it's kind of between a place called Napili and Kanapali. It's a really small community. There's not a lot here. So other than trails and sun.
Sounds awesome. So the first question is always a challenging one. Who is Katherine?
Katherine is a Canadian trail runner living in Maui, and that's what I'm gonna go with. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different parts of me. I come from Canada, like I said, I'm living here now, but like my whole roots and system come from there. I've been into endurance sports my whole life. My mom and dad lived in a really small town, so we were brought up like racing mountain bikes all over the world. And so, yeah, traveling and being really tuned into the body has always been a big part of my life. Before I really took trail running seriously, I was also working as a massage therapist for a professional mountain bike team. So I traveled with them to races and was their therapist for a number of years and worked with a few teams doing that. So that was pretty cool. I don't know if this is the kind of answer you're looking for, but
it's always fascinating. Yeah, it's always fascinating where people go with this question. Sometimes people take it very literally, and sometimes people take 15 minutes to answer the question. So it's one of my favorite questions to ask. Like, how do you describe yourself? And it often drives the rest of the conversation. So, Canadian living in Hawaii, what brought you there?
My boyfriend is a chiropractor on the island here, so he's been living here for a while, and we decided you just can't really date someone who lives in the South Pacific. It's pretty hard to have a long distance relationship on an island. So we decided to try to just be together full time, and that's really what brought me here.
Very cool. My girlfriend is a travel nurse and was trying to get an assignment on Oahu this past winter, and let's just say it was a very desirable place, and there weren't a lot of openings. So I'm kind of glad I didn't learn about the long distance relationship between mainland and Hawaii, but I was planning to be there for a month in the winter, which would have been pretty cool. But anyway, so you're living there. I have a handful of friends from the area who say that trail running in Hawaii is incredible. Talk to me about that and sort of how you found that community and how it enables you to do what you're doing.
Well, I would say the Maui trail running community is still really, really small. I think Oahu is really like where the development kind of seems to be from what I can see. There's a lot more trail development there, and there's lots of people who are keen to run. It's just a bigger place. Maui, I have two friends who run with trails with me, and that's pretty much it. But I train solo like 99% of the time. The trails here, it's interesting because there's so much tourism here. They try to really keep it contained. So there are a few trails that are designated, and they really try to keep people to those trails. But there are actually a lot of trails here. So a lot of like quad trails and locals build trails for horses and all sorts of like kind of that sort of thing. So yeah, a combination of both of those things is what I run. I usually we share a car here, so I don't have a car, so I usually run from home to get to where I'm going, and I like to be on the trails as much as possible. So I've definitely created lots of like routes from our backyard that connect over to the West Maui Mountains, which is where I usually run. It is also a volcano. Haleakala is like the famous volcano on Maui that people like to run and come see, and it's phenomenal, but it is also very weather dependent and very far from the west side, which is where I live. So the West Maui Mountains are more sort of the zone that I'm focused on. And they're all sorts of different things. Like there's a lot of different mini biospheres here. Like you'll go to Lahaina, for example, and it's a desert. And then in Kahana, we get rain almost every single day. So the trails are pretty wet and muddy. It's also not an active volcano or anything like that, but it is a volcano. And so there's lots of different weather on that volcano as well. So certain parts of it you'll have like desert and sun, and certain parts of it you'll have like a jungle and it's super wet and rainy. So we get you can really chase what you're looking for.
And who's the little furry friend that's,
This is
that wants to make
Molly.
an appearance?
Molly is a 49ers fan. So she is barking away in her jersey as the game is playing. I don't know who's winning, but Molly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I found most surprising when I started asking friends about Hawaii was the like different climates that exist in that area, or in a small area, and like the elevation changes. You can get up pretty high. Is that true?
Definitely. Yeah. Haleakala is at 10,000 feet. So it's really quite high. And the West Maui Mountains aren't that high, I wouldn't say. Nowhere near that high. Maybe the very top of it, but I don't run anything that high. Other than on the volcano when I get to go there.
What is the volcano running like?
It's very cool. It's quiet up there. It's like it's so quiet that it's loud kind of sensation. It's like I'm sure being in super high alpine. It's quite rocky and sandy in parts. Like there's this one trail called the Sliding Sands Trail, which is just big sandy switchbacks. So it's super hard to climb, but like a beautiful descent. And you look over everything. You can kind of see from all angles. So you see Keho'olave, you see Malakini, you see all the little islands kind of sprinkled around Hawaii. Well, you don't actually see all the, like just those few little ones, Lanai, Keho'olave, and Malakini. But I also found out there's 132 Hawaiian islands here. So
Wow.
there's quite a few.
Very cool. So you said you do a lot of your most of your training solo. Has that been how you've trained your whole life? Talk to me about if that was a big shift and what you've done to make that something that works.
Yeah. So I'd say like for running, when I was on the West Coast in British Columbia training, I had really great training buddies and people that I would definitely go with. And yeah, here is very different. I don't have a ton of friends, and when I do, it's just hard to coordinate. I want to go when I want to go. They want to go when they want to go. So it makes more sense for me to train alone a lot of the time. I think just really listening to David has been the biggest piece of it, like biggest change for me with training. David and Megan, I'm sure they collaborate all the time, but they just want you to focus so inwards. Like you're so dialed into your own body. Like for me, I don't really look at heart rate. I don't really look at like really specific statistics until I get back and I'm looking at Strava, but I really try to dial inwards to see kind of what's happening with my body. And when it's time to really push, I think I've never had a problem pushing to the like really hard limits. I'm the type of athlete that can like get to the red zone really easily. And I'm very motivated to do that. So I wouldn't say that's ever been one of my issues. I'd say probably the opposite, trying to have slow days and really like learn why a slow day is so important and learn how to truly go slowly. And I always found it challenging when I was with friends to go that slow. Like someone's always chomping at the bit to go a little bit faster. So I think that's actually really helped because now I feel like my slow days are truly slow and my fast days are really, really fast. So
I think it might have been Noah Drawdy, who's a very fast marathoner, who said, "You don't know how slow you need to run until you run by yourself." It's either him or Kyle Merber or someone like that. But yeah, it's totally true. I mean, I live in Boulder, and the same is like this plague of running too fast too often is definitely true. But even here, there are pro runners who like their easy pace is 7:30, and they can run a marathon in the 4s or 5s. So there's variability there. What's it like training? So you're training for this. The episode will be out after you run Bandera and hopefully crush Bandera. But what's it like training for a race like 100K mostly by yourself?
Well, I mean, I don't mind it at all. The only other 100K effort I've done was an FKT, and so I was mostly solo for that as well. And yeah, I don't mind long distance by myself. I truly like it. I actually really like training alone. I find it takes a lot of energy for me to be around other people. Like that's one of my traits, is that it takes a lot of energy to be around other people. So I'm really careful about how I spend that kind of time. Cause I find it actually like takes other energy away that I would, I'd rather be able to do like extra core, or extra this or that, or just something that makes the whole workout more effective, rather than run with someone and just have, just a running partner for the sake of going out with someone, and for the sake of having company. So, yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of people that this resonates with. And then there are people like myself that are like, if I could run every single mile with somebody else, I would. And this past summer, I was in a pretty big running funk. And the way I got out of it was like, out of, I don't know, 70 miles, I ran 67 of them with somebody else over
Wow.
like a 10-day period. And I was like, this is how I'm going to get out of it. And that it worked. But it's so interesting how it's different for everyone.
Well, do you feel like that's because of like, do you kind of feel like you lack that internal motivation? Like, is that drive maybe not there for you, or like what drives you to run?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a good question. I like to run because of the socializing that it enables. I don't find that I need to race. I find that I like to be really fit so that I can do adventures with friends. And so like for the last 2 years in the late spring, early summer, if you ask what I'm training for, the answer is to be fit enough to say yes to any adventure within 3 to 5 days.
That's awesome.
And so what that's led to is like a 5-hour day in Tahoe and a 12-hour day in up near Aspen, and like that kind of stuff where it's like a race effort in that I'm emptying the tank on the day, but it doesn't come with the same, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to, go at the start line at 5 a.m. And it's just like, it's just so different. And the pandemic taught me this, that the racing isn't what gets me going. And I keep chasing marathons and keep having these like really bad experiences, but I just love the marathon for some reason. And so I had a really bad one in December, and I'm just like, that's it. I'm going to give it a break for a bit and just like chase these longer adventures and do it with friends and have epic, like last summer, I was going to pace Zoe Rome at Western States. And I didn't know if I'd run 10 miles with her or 30 miles. And so my training goal for the spring and summer was like, be fit enough to not get dropped. And then I got COVID and I didn't run. So David was like, maybe not the best idea to, it was like 3 weeks prior. It's like, maybe don't be a complete question mark in the canyons with a cardiovascular problem. But
yeah,
like that kind of stuff, like that's why I do it. That gets me going, helping somebody else accomplish their adventure, or just like making sweet memories in the mountains with friends.
But those people are also so integral in everything as well, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't say that racing is what defines me. I don't necessarily look at like chasing races all the time. I think that that's one of the things that I feel like I'm almost sort of insecure about, is that I don't always have a super clear plan as to where I'm going with things. But I love to train. I love the routine. I love the day to day. I love being healthy. Like my ultimate goal is to just like research health, really like see how strong and like well-rounded my body can get. And I think that it's a really easy way to see how that's progressing through racing. And I think it's fun to go on adventures. Like I'm always like, oh, where sounds cool to run. And with immigrating to the US, I do have to stay in the US for another few months, just as like the paperwork kind of goes through. But so all of my sort of short-term goals are in the US. But yeah, I feel like there's Yeah, there's just so many cool things to do. It's true. Everything you described, I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think of that. Like those are things that don't even cross my mind because I'm not in that world. Boulder's probably half social running, half racing. So yeah.
Yes. So you said a lot in there that like totally resonated that I want to dig on more. I'm curious your relationship with, so you talked about like you're happy just training. I feel the same way. I feel like, again, 2020 taught me I don't need to race. I really just want to train a lot and like get in that consistency and get in that groove and just like be doing the work and be in it. Because that, when you're able to be consistent, there's just no better feeling and it feels so good and you get flow and all this stuff. So you're supported by Hoka. How does that factor into your desire to just train versus, I'm sure there's some, whether it's conscious or subconscious draw to show up to races, whether they're Hoka races or they're, other races that, that like you're on the start line for.
Totally. I think I've always said, like, I'm going to run in Hoka regardless of whether they're supporting me or not. I absolutely love their shoes and I believe in their product. Like, so you'll see me in Hoka's probably regardless. But I feel like they recognize that I'm doing this for a reason, right? I don't just train to not race ever. I do love racing. I think there's a difference between overcommitting to races and under delivering and choosing carefully and making a plan as you go through. Like step one is see how Bandera goes. Like I think it's better than trying to be like, okay, and then after Bandera, like XYZ is going to happen because I don't know what's going to happen. What if my body falls apart? What if I feel like only doing a half marathon? What if I don't want to run 100 miles? What if, so I don't want to, put that pressure on myself before I have to. And I think David's been so supportive of this because that was something I was really worried about, even just like saying out loud to him was, how do I even bring this up that I don't really know exactly what I want to do yet? And he's always just like, you can do whatever you want. Like there's no, there's no,
spoiler alert.
Yeah. Why are you worried about it? Just do it. Have fun. See what sounds good to you. And so I've truly been taking that and that advice from him and just really trying to like look inwards and be like, what actually sounds fun and what would be a really cool adventure. And so I'd say that.
So I got to know Devin Yanko pretty well in 2015, 2016, and we've been very friendly ever since. And so when I started getting into trail running, I had the opportunity to pick her brain on whatever I was curious about, really. And we did a podcast. I think it was like the 5th or 6th episode that I've ever released. So I'm way overdue for another round with her because she's fascinating and full of knowledge. And anyway, the point that I'm getting at was it was like spring of or winter of 2017 maybe. And I was feeling burned out on the road stuff. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And the reason I asked her was because I knew that she's done everything from the 5K to the 100 mile and she's good at all of it. And so when you look at someone who has this like plethora of skill, who can do it all, like their insight is incredibly valuable. Mm-hmm. And so she was like, just do what's fun and chase that. I was like, wow, really deep stuff. But hearing it from her was like the sort of unlocking of that realization that I needed. And I came back to her a few weeks later. I was like, I'm thinking of a trail race. Should I sign up for a marathon or sign up for 50K first? She's like, you wouldn't be asking me if you didn't want to do the 50K. That's like, damn, you're right. She's like, what do you think I was going to say?
Well, it's almost like you also want to be like, is this what I should be doing? Like you're almost asking with, presenting the options, but you kind of know in your heart, right? And that's the thing is that we're the ones driving the ship and we got to be the ones with those clear goals if we want to go somewhere.
Totally. Yeah. And you made a good point earlier. It's like, this is all supposed to be fun. So just do the fun stuff. But I often find that people feel drawn to do certain things based on sponsor obligations or what other people are doing, or like the community that I started running with when I got into running, everyone was running marathons. And so I signed up for marathon because that's what all of my friends were doing. Mm-hmm. And now you look at the trail world and it's the same thing with hundreds. It seems that like everyone's like, cool, nice. Yeah. 50 mile. But when are you doing 100? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about you touched on it a little bit. I'm curious about your relationship with that distance and the draw or lack of when it comes to going longer versus like the intrinsic motivation of whatever you want.
I think it ebbs and flows for me, really. Like I enjoy lots of different distances. I genuinely will always love a 50K. I think they're really fun. I feel like I kind of have a base fitness that just from my cycling background that will always kind of allow me to run that 50K. Like it's that 3-4 hour or like 4 or 5 hour sort of like time frame comes really naturally to me. The 100K effort it's something that I don't always have motivation to do. I think that it definitely comes and goes. In the wintertime, I find is kind of the time where I do feel like doing it. I'm not too sure why that is, but every time I've like had the feeling to do it, it's usually like January, February, March. And I'm not too sure. Maybe that's the time of year where I feel like I have lots to think about. Like I feel like I reflect on a lot of things, a lot of like personal goals drive that motivation. So just to start the year with like doing the best for your body, and with a long race also comes a long period of rest, and also comes a really aggressive taper. So that's hard and that's easy, right? So like in the middle of the season, in the middle of the summer, I guess I live here now, but like, in BC summer, I don't want to take a week off.
Right.
Like that's the worst. I like, please don't make me take a week off. But when you do 100K effort, you need to, like, otherwise like hormonally things don't come back and you hurt and you just can't get out of the tank. And so I think maybe also that I can, focus hard on working when I take that week off, and things just seem to kind of happen more naturally this time of year for me. So I try not to push it if I really don't feel like doing, longer efforts, and because it never ends well. 9 hours or 10 hours is a long time to be out there. So you need to really want to do that.
Totally. If you've been enjoying this podcast and can spare 90 seconds of your time today, can you do me a favor? Can you pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review? It helps other people find and enjoy the podcast too. Thanks so much. I'm super proud to partner with Microcosm Coaching as the show's newest sponsor. What I love about their style is that it's coaching the human who runs, not the runner who humans. I've done a handful of group runs with their crew, and I'm good friends with several of their coaches and dietitians. Jumpstart your running goals in 2023 with Microcosm Coaching. They support and empower athletes of all abilities and backgrounds. Microcosm Coaching offers community-centered training with a multidisciplinary team of coaches and athletes all over the world. Their team will help you celebrate the highs and work through the lows in an athletic life and sustain your love for running long term. Microcosm Coaching will hold you accountable to your athletic potential with an evidence-backed, individualized training plan and daily check-ins. They have the support and resources you need to define your values and reach your goals. Find out more at microcosm-coaching.com and let them know I sent you. Are you psyched on your running schedule this year? No? Well, we've got just the thing. The Mount Charleston Marathon and Half Marathon on April 1st. If you're looking for an awesome course, lots of downhill, and a race that finishes in the still somehow not well-known outdoor mecca of Las Vegas, then you should sign up for the Mount Charleston Race Series. World-class restaurants to celebrate your race, epic outdoor recreation opportunities, and unbelievable entertainment surround this fast race. But what about the race itself? Did we mention it's a Boston qualifying race? It definitely is. So if you're looking for a gorgeous and fast run through an incredible canyon and forest, Mount Charleston is it. Register at runrevel.com and use the code FTLR for $10 off your registration. That's runrevel.com. Is it a good market to buy a home in? What about to sell a home? What even goes on in the housing market? How do you even keep track? Well, good news for you. You don't have to know all the answers if you're interested in buying or selling your home, because you can just work with the best realtor around, Lauren Daniels. Whether you're thinking of buying or selling your home, Lauren is your go-to. She treats every client with care and helps make what could be a very scary process, dare I say, fun. Lauren helps you get organized and stay on top of important deadlines and guides you towards the right home for you instead of pushing you towards something that doesn't feel right. Even if you're not ready yet or you're not in the Denver or Boulder area, we highly recommend following Lauren on Instagram because she's always sharing great information about the housing market. Give her a follow at lauren.in.colorado on Instagram. And if you're already ready to start the conversation, give her a shout at ldaniels@milehighmodern.com and let her know we sent you. That's ldaniels@milehighmodern.com. You've alluded a lot to following a process versus outcome approach where the races, I think you said it without saying it, like you love the process. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Definitely.
But my takeaway was you love the process and you love the grind of doing the work. And races are an important sort of benchmark, but it's not the end all be all. And but it helps as like a check-in to see where you're at.
Definitely.
I'm curious how you got to this perspective and if it's always been that way for you. And the reason I ask is a few weeks ago or months ago now, I was super curious about pro athletes and process versus outcome and like how much of it is focused on one way versus the other. And two athletes in particular shared their opinion of this in the exact same way that you described it in different words. It was Kate Grace, who's a mid-distance track athlete, and Kat Bradley, who's an accomplished trail runner. And they basically said the same thing as what you said, like the races or the metrics or whatever are little carrots along the path and enable you to like course correct in certain scenarios. But if you focus on them, then it gets out of hand. So I'm curious, first, your thoughts on that and like how you got there.
Yeah, I mean, we can all kind of agree that racing itself doesn't earn you an income. Like, I'm not going to win a race and be good for the year. Like, that's not how I earn money, but it's a really fun thing for me. So I think seeing really elite sports has really kind of brought that like humility to me a little bit, like watching other world-class athletes who compete at that highest level and still struggle, like don't make a ton of money. And, you know, they're super famous in all sorts of different ways. They're sponsored by Red Bull. They're sponsored by very, awesome bike brands. And they don't like, they're not living all that different of a lifestyle than I am. So I think to chase being on top all the time it's not really going to serve you with anything that I'm aware of. I think that the process is really like, it's the habit forming and it's the day to day. I was listening to David and Megan's podcast yesterday with Alex Honnold and they were talking to him about, he was like, oh, I only want to run twice a week for, 2 hours. And they were like, no, you should do 4 times a week for 20 minutes because that's going to help your body to recognize, the neuromuscular kind of component of things. And I think that's it as well. You can't enter a race without practicing a whole bunch. Like, that's not the point. The point is that you're really, really good at what you do and you're showing up because you've put in all this time and all this work. Like it's the fun part. Well, they're both fun. The fun part is the day-to-day habit and routine of it all. And then also it's really cool to show up and be like, where do I stack? Like, am I really fast right now? Or what are all these other girls doing? And I'm personally not really the kind of racer that looks at who's on the list or who my competition's going to be. Cause that just psychs me out. There's so many fast, amazing, accomplished women out there who like to run and you never know where they're at in their training. They could be, just doing basic treadmill runs in the middle of the winter, or they could be training in the heat somewhere. And so trying to overly anticipate all that stuff is really hard. So I think all you can really do is what you can do. And so focusing on your own process and your own day-to-day commitment to it is the only way to be successful, regardless of what you do with it. So, I think just try to be the best. Even if that doesn't demonstrate at a race, you still want to be the best at what you're doing, no matter what, on any day of the week. Like, I want to be really good at doing slow runs. I want to be really good at doing rest days. I want to be really, really good at doing, 100Ks, but you have to be good at all of it to be good at any of it. So I think that's more what I recognize, that it's for the health of the body. Like,
for the long run.
Yes, there you go. It's for the long run. You got to maintain it your whole life. Like, health is wealth. You only have one body and you have to maintain it forever. So if you blow it up in the first 35 years, you're going to be miserable for the rest of them. So
totally. Yeah. This is the epitome of why I started this podcast, right? It's an exploration of what has enabled people to achieve success. And what can we learn from that? And how do we even define success? And so this hypothesis that I have is that the people who understand it in the way that you're speaking about it, they define success in a different way than winning races. And it's more sustainable, it's better for your mind and better for your body. And it's been a fascinating I've got to ask more Canadians, process versus outcome, because I love how you guys say it.
you should,
I find that this conversation to be so fascinating because it's not intuitive, or at least before I started having this conversation, it wasn't intuitive that, like, if you don't focus on the outcome, you achieve the outcome, kind of a thing. But I'm still curious, like, were you always like this, or is this something that you've learned through making mistakes and learning from other people in the space and that kind of a thing? And talk to me. You're definitely nodding, so yeah, talk to me through.
No, 100%. I mean, I think I'm extremely competitive, and I think that when channeled correctly, that's a very amazing, powerful thing. But it also can easily be channeled poorly, right? And so, like, my parents had me in international mountain bike races by the time I was 12 years old. So I was around like super hungry people for gold always. Like, everyone was chasing that. And again, I didn't make any money. I mean, I got to travel the world and I got to do a lot of cool adventures, and I've been connected and have been able to have careers out of it. But the sport itself and being in those events didn't actually gain me anything other than maybe some like recognition. But people forget, like, the next race happens and everybody's forgotten what the last, who won the race last year. Nobody remembers that stuff. So unless it's a really spectacular year or a really notable win. We all know Jim Walmsley wins everything, but we probably couldn't be specific about, what his time was or like what year he won. Or maybe some people out there are. I don't know. I know he's phenomenal at anything he touches, and I know he's the best. And so that's more what I focus on than results or really specific things.
So we share the same coach. David has helped me learn this as well. I used to be obsessed with breaking 3 hours in the marathon, and I didn't consider myself like a good runner until I did that. And my first marathon was a 3:35, and I was like, damn, that was slow. And I had to be reminded that, like, that's not slow. That's faster than average for all marathons. And this perspective around times defining value, or times providing validation, is like a very short-sighted way to like be happy briefly and then really like not understand. So yeah, the coaching from David has been instrumental in helping to grasp, like, how do you actually look at the sport from a perspective that enables you to do it for the long run. See what I did there?
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with you there. He's phenomenal. It's a day-to-day thing with him, though. Like, it's not like I can specify one day he had this conversation with me. It's every time he talks to me, I'm like, oh, he just reaffirms that what you're doing is amazing,
Totally. I believe this podcast is also being supported by TJ and Zoe of Microcosm Coaching. So I want to give a shout out to them first for supporting this episode, but also for doing the same thing. I know a ton of their athletes that have achieved similar types of progress, and coaching the human that runs versus the runner that humans. Like that's the overarching theme of how to be a successful coach. Where it's all about like, how does running fit into your life versus how does your life fit into running?
Totally.
And when I got into running, it was like, I've got to fit my life into running versus the other way around. So I slightly alluded to the topic around defining success. So I'm curious how you define success today.
I would say I define success based on how I feel during and after. I think like if we're talking about running, like a successful training run for me is going out there and being so tuned in that I know that I went hard enough, coming home and like being sore in the right places and following all the things, even though I didn't really want to, like being like mountain legs right now. Like I'm so tired, but yeah, okay, I'll do the 50 reps or whatever. You just do it because you want to, again, I want to be the best. So success to me is completing all of those things and trying to follow what he's saying. Success in like a bigger sense, I would say is mostly just about being happy day to day. So being not miserable in what I'm doing. I tend to be the type of person that can just kind of be robotic a little bit about stuff. So I can like go for a run, get home, then I ride my bike to work. I work for like 4 or 5 hours doing massage therapy, and then I ride home, and then sometimes I double. So I have like, zone 1-0 for 6-7 hours there in the middle. It's so, and getting home, sometimes I'm like, I hate my life. I'm so tired, and a lot of that's to do with feeling. So like trying to regulate that blood sugar to make your headspace happier all the time, which again is a David and Megan thing that they've helped me so much with. And, I think success is not hating your life and doing the right thing every day.
Or most days.
Most days, yes.
So a lot of people have physically demanding jobs and are interested in how to manage training outside of that. I look at my girlfriend who works 36 hours a week on her feet over 3 shifts, and she fits training in the other 4 days. And what you do for work is incredibly physically demanding.
Totally.
How do you incorporate, right? Like, and your clients don't care if you're on a rest day or if it's a long run day or workout day or whatever. So how do you
do it?
Handle that? Yeah, how do you do it?
I think eating right is number one. Like you can fuel your way through anything, truly, like is what I'm finding. Like, as long as I'm eating consistently to get through all of those activities, I can do it. I definitely have times. So right now I'm really specifically working with a couple patients, mostly every day. She's 93 and he's 73. So they're elderly. I help them with like all physical care. So I'm like, they have a pool and a sauna and like a full sort of like setup. So we do, we do a lot of physical therapy, and then also trying to just like help them increase health in all sort of senses of the word. So right now, the specific project I'm working on, I do have like more ability to have breaks. So like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just treated you for 2 hours. I need to eat a snack. They're usually like, yeah. Like take 15 minutes, go eat. Like, and they're like, eat anything in our house. So they're very sweet and extremely accommodating. But in a clinic setting, which is what I'm used to doing, or in professional sports, you just have to really advocate. You have to be like, I need to eat, or I need to stop, and like, I need a break right now. And that's not possible in, I don't think, like nursing situations so much as when you work for yourself. But I think it's just, and really trying to take out what uses a lot of energy. So I was saying to you, like, for me, interacting with other people takes a lot of energy from me. So unless it's like my boyfriend or his son or like someone really close in the family or, patients or whatever, like I find anything outside of that really tiring. So I'm very conscious of saying yes to things, and will usually just say like, I'll let you know the day of, which maybe isn't awesome for people, but it's how I conserve energy. Because if I get to that day and I can't go out because I'm exhausted and going to be super grouchy, you don't want to be around me anyways. So I just usually that's how I manage it is trying to decrease like other people being around me and eating a lot and taking downtime, sitting on the lanai, watching the sun go down, getting in the sauna, like really just taking downtime. So,
well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me on the podcast.
heck yeah.
What
Thank you.
you said something that I'm super curious about. You said you're right now focusing on helping to increase health in a 93-year-old and a 72-year-old. What does increasing health look like for a 93-year-old?
Well, she's a phenomenal lady. I must say myself. She is fully functional, so she can still walk. She's very lucid. Like she actually has like more lucid conversations probably than the 73-year-old. She anything like I found her a craniosacral therapist to work with here, so she has like a history of she basically had her hair pulled really, really aggressively by a tractor when she worked on a farm in her like 30s. And so she has a lot of fascial restrictions through her shoulder and upper back and neck and TMJ, and it's all very interconnected. So craniosacral therapists work to reestablish the craniosacral flow in the body, which has a lot to do with like hormone regulation and, neurotransmitters. So helps her literally feel better. Like she'll go through kind of depressive episodes and we'll have her do a treatment and she goes to sleep for the rest of the day and wakes up and she feels amazing. She also like recently had probably COVID. I don't quite know what she had, but she had, a really bad chest cold. And so I just, once she wasn't any, contagious anymore, just kind of anything like trying to literally put her life back together. She needed me to like do her sheets, clean her bathroom. Like she's like, help me, And so it can be anything. She also, we got her like what are they called? We call it the Beamer. It's basically like a mat for stem cell stimulation. So she lays on that for like 2 hours a day to help just like with blood. She has a really amazing naturopath here that she gets like IV infusions from. She also does ozone therapy with the naturopath. So she anything and everything. She's got the budget to live her best life, and she's doing it. So
Cool. You mentioned sauna a couple of times. Talk to me about your use of sauna. It's something that I do regularly, and I have one because I think it's one of the best things you can possibly do on a regular basis. And there's a lot of science that supports that statement as well. Talk to me about your routine with it and what it's done for you as well, particularly in this age where like you look on Instagram and everyone's dunking in a cold tub.
Yeah. I love the sauna. I think that the sauna is an amazing detox tool. Like, I think that that's honestly what keeps me healthy a lot of the time when bugs are in the family. Like, I haven't been sick in over a year, I would say, with anything like colds or anything like that, just because I sauna quite a bit. Recently, David's kind of been asking me to taper back on the saunas just because I think there were a lot of other stresses kind of happening with external like family stuff, which just takes a lot of energy. And so I was finding I was so tired. And so he was like, hey, let's back off on the sauna, which actually made me feel really good. So we put it in periodically, but we also use it like our son Romeo, he gets like cough from the volcano fog. So we'll take him in the sauna to just like help his lungs and things like that. So the temperature's only 110 and I'll go in with him for, 10 or 20 minutes, but that's not truly saunaing. But we have a pool here too. So I'll do like pretty cold dunks when I'm using the sauna, usually 20, 30 minute intervals and then jump in the cold pool and do it again. You got to remember it's pretty hot in Hawaii, so I sweat a lot of times in the day.
Yeah, so I got one last March, and we had a couple of stretches over the summer where it was like 100, 102, 97, like pretty consistently. And it's fascinating, like when you're actually properly heat trained and not in humidity, like that's very tolerable. And like I went out and ran 2 hours and felt great. And it's so wild that like you can do these things when you're properly prepared. But yeah, go figure.
Well, and I think like that also just helps with adaptation, right? Like the more I sauna, the more I sweat, the more I'm used to it. So when I'm in the trails, like, when a BC friend is here running, they're like, oh my gosh, it is so hot. Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, it's not that bad. Like I have 1 bottle today. So it's, it's all relative to what you're used to. And I think that has been a really instrumental piece of adapting me to heat. And I'm excited to see how it plays out in racing. I think it'll be helpful with blood volume and things like that, right? Just general like blood health, I think is really enriched when you can be in the heat a lot.
For sure. I think the last question I want to ask is about if you were to look back, I don't know, 10 years ago and tell a newer runner version of yourself something, what would it be?
Take rest days. 100% take rest days. I never took a rest day until David started coaching me. And the first thing he said when I first started coaching with him was like right off the bat, we were going to take a rest day. And I was so upset because I was like, really? I get a new coach and the first thing he does is tell me to take a rest day? Like, I don't know if this is going to work. Anyway, I put my heart and soul into it and I decided to trust him and I have not looked back since. He's the best. He's the bee's knees. So
amazing. Katherine, thanks so much for taking some time to chat and we'll see you out there.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome chatting with you too.
Of
and
course.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Cool.
All right.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.